Major breaking news, a huge win for Donald Trump as he continues to secure our borders and make sure that foreigners do not break into the country or otherwise stay here improperly, all reversing the terrible anti-American, pro-invasion policies of President Joe Biden. Another huge win, this time, believe it or not, in Boston, Massachusetts. You've heard me right. Boston, Massachusetts awards a big win to Donald Trump and his America First agenda. Let's break it down when we come right back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the 4-Box Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and I'm proud to say the top voice of the Second Amendment in America. Thank you, 2025 Gundies Awards. All right, folks, this is a big deal. Big deal. During the Joe Biden era, Joe Biden used the Immigration and Nationality Act, a specific part of it that was designed to allow, on a case-by-case basis, individual foreigners to come to the United States and be paroled, which basically meant that they could stay in the United States, either because they were really valuable to the United States for some reason, like an Albert Einstein coming to the United States to help us with an atomic bomb program or science or whatever. Some huge significant national interest was being advanced, or there's some major humanitarian reason for allowing a particular person in our country to stay on what is known as a grant of parole under the immigration laws. Well, Joe Biden, as you well know, did not like America. He did not like our Second Amendment. He did not like our Constitution. And frankly, he didn't like Americans. He certainly did not like any conservative, traditional heritage Americans who clinged to their gun, who cling to their religion, who were deplorables and trash. All of these things I'm confident Joe Biden agreed with. And he wanted to replace us. And one of the ways he tried to replace us was that he granted parole on a categorical basis. Hear what I just said? Not on a case-by-case basis, with an individual determination of a particular person, like Albert Einstein, or a particular individual. No, he granted parole to 532,000 individuals, foreigners from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. 532,000 foreigners from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela could come to the United States and stay in the United States on what is known as a parole basis under the Immigration and Nationality Act, even though the statute allows the Secretary of Homeland Security to grant paroles to individuals only if it advances a major American interest, national interest, or for particular humanitarian reasons. Joe Biden said that all of this was true and did not do a case-by-case analysis of each one of these individual 532,000 foreigners from these four countries. He just en masse categorized them all and brought them in and granted them parole, which basically meant that they could hang out in the United States, they could work, taking American jobs, they could even get public welfare. That's right, they could get public benefits and work in the United States. 532,000 of these individuals. So Donald Trump comes into office, and I'm happy to report earlier this year, he terminated this program. First of all, he said that this program of allowing 532,000 individuals from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela was no can do. It wasn't even legal to do so, because under the relevant statute, parole is only to be granted if doing so advances an American national interest, and none of these did, or on humanitarian grounds, and Donald Trump said none of these did. This is basically about replacing Americans with people that are much more subservient and willing to toe the line and kiss the buttocks of the deep state overlords. It's essentially what they were trying to do. They wanted to bring in a much more subservient group of people to be dependent upon the deep state and the leftist agenda of the left wing here in the United States. They don't want self-reliant people. They don't want independent people. They don't want citizens. They want subjects and citizens of the sort we see in many parts of the country, or I should say many parts of the world, not the country, but many parts of the world. So with that said, Donald Trump came in and canceled this program. He said no more parole for any of these individuals. They can apply on a case-by-case basis, but there's no more categorization of parole. They're not going to all have parole. I'm canceling the program right here and right now. Well, needless to say, the individuals and a bunch of nonprofit groups and others, I believe, brought lawsuit in, you guessed it, the United States District Court for the District of Boston. Why? Because, as you know, as a general matter, the federal district courts in Boston are some of the worst in the country when it comes for actually caring about America and respecting our Constitution and doing what's best for Americans. So needless to say, this case was assigned to Judge Indira Tawani, an Indian American judge in Boston, graduate of Radcliffe and the like. I think went to Berkeley Law School, something like that. Federal judge there. And she, of course, bent over backwards and says, no, Donald Trump, you cannot cancel this program the way you're doing it. Joe Biden had it right. You can't do this. You're simply the president of the United States, you peon. I'm a federal district judge. You're simply the president. You don't count. You don't get to make this decision. So she enjoined, with a preliminary injunction, the ending of the parole for these 532,000 foreigners from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Well, I'm happy to report that on an appeal to really arguably the worst court in America when it comes to respecting our rights, the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit out of Boston, shockingly, in my opinion, in a 3-0 decision, a majority opinion, a unanimous decision, actually overturned the district court, saying that indeed Donald Trump, as the president of the United States, had the full-blown legal authority under the relevant statute and beyond, including the fact he's the president under Article 2 of the United States Constitution, with all the executive powers vested in him, a single man, a single president. That's in the text of Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. And Donald Trump, as the president, had full authority to cancel and revoke parole of these individuals. Because what was going on here was Joe Biden granted this parole and was hoping that Donald Trump would not be able to legally undo this. But Donald Trump indeed undid it, explained that having these 502,000 foreigners in the United States did nothing to advance the national interest, which I'm sure is true. You know, I'm sure most of them, if not all of them, are somehow sucking at the teat of government, welfare benefits, or maybe benefits from NGOs that in turn get money from the government, whatever it is. But I'm sure, importing a bunch of these people from essentially glorified third world countries is not exactly what we need here in the United States, an advanced first world country. But that's just my opinion. Tell me if you disagree in the comments below. So in addition to not advancing the national interest, if anything, it subverted the national interest, nor is there any humanitarian reason for doing this. And again, the statute specifically says that if there's a humanitarian reason for allowing a particular person to stay in the country on parole status, guess what? They have to make that individual determination. You have to apply and say, I have a unique reason on humanitarian reasons for staying in the United States. So just to give you a sense, this is what the court had to say about Donald Trump's reasoning, which was upheld, and these individuals no longer have parole status. Here's what the court had to say about Donald Trump's reasoning for terminating this Joe Biden policy of paroling and allowing them to stick around in the United States, these 532,000 people. President Trump's termination notice provided several reasons that independently and cumulatively supported the Department of Homeland Security's decision to terminate this parole program. It explained that the termination was appropriate and necessary because the parole programs did not serve a significant public benefit, were not necessary to reduce levels of immigration or illegal immigration, did not sufficiently mitigate the domestic effects of illegal immigration, were not serving their intended purposes, and were inconsistent with the administration's, that's the Trump administration's, foreign policy goals. The Trump termination notice also stated that the Department of Homeland Security believes that consideration of any urgent humanitarian reasons for granting parole is best addressed on a case-by-case basis, taking into consideration each alien's specific circumstances. And the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, they agreed with that. They assessed this. And they specifically said that if you read the statute, again, it talks about making case-by-case determinations of specific individuals. You can't just say, everyone in Nicaragua. You can't just say everyone from Cuba. But again, as the court said, this statute's all about a case-by-case, individualized determination. It's about a narrowly focused inquiry. You can't just wave a magic wand like Joe Biden did and says everyone from a particular country gets to come into America and hang out, take our jobs, work, get public welfare, get public benefits, and so on. You can't just do that. It has to be individualized. Here's what the Court of Appeals says in talking about the Trump legal position, which it ultimately says was fine. Earlier this year, Acting Secretary of Homeland Security Benjamin Huffman published a memorandum about the Department of Homeland Security's exercise of the parole authority under the relevant statutes. The memorandum provided that under the relevant statutes, it applies in narrow circumstances and only on a case-by-case basis, and does not authorize categorical parole programs. Given this interpretation of the statute, the memorandum declared that many current DHS policies and practices governing parole were inconsistent with the relevant statute. And because of this, what did the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit out of Boston have to say? They basically said that there's no way the plaintiff suing the Trump administration can win this case at this point. And the injunction by the district court judge Indira Tawani is a no-go zone and was thwarted, stayed, and shut down. Here's what the First Circuit had to say in concluding the Trump legal position was the winning one here and now. Since the Trump administration's interpretation of the statute is persuasive enough, we cannot discern a clear legal error, as the district court put it, in the Department of Homeland Security's reasoning proffered in the termination notice. We therefore are unable to conclude that plaintiffs made the required strong showing that the agency's action was arbitrary, capricious, and abuse of discretion, or otherwise not in accordance with the law, on this basis alone. The plaintiffs accordingly did not make a strong showing that they are likely to succeed on the merits in this respect. So another big win for the Trump administration. These 532,000 individuals from these four countries presumably are now going to either have to fly home, be sent home, or otherwise deported, or they can't stay here, right? It's like the song, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, is I think a very good approach to this the Trump administration's approach to these foreigners that have come to the country and wanted to suck at the teat of our welfare state, which is what Joe Biden really wanted, because it gave them an excuse not only to replace Americans with non-Americans, a much more subservient group of people dependent upon the deep state and large government. It also replaced us, hopefully they were hoping, I suspect, down the road for the purposes of voting. But these 532,000 people are likely going to go bye-bye back to their home countries, or maybe not to their home countries, to some other third-party country. That's up to them and our federal government. But the federal district court in Boston is not going to be able to thwart the Trump administration anymore, because this U.S. Court of Appeals decision for the First Circuit has just ruled in favor of Donald Trump and against these 532,000 foreigners from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. So there you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed learning more about today's Donald Trump victory in the federal courts. Even in the First Circuit Court of Appeals, not a great court for Trump as a general matter, but it's good to see that Trump is not even winning in these bad courts. That is a good sign that the trend is indeed our friend. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed again today's episode. Make sure you follow me on X at @4boxdown. Don't forget to subscribe both to YouTube and to Rumble. I look forward to it on again real soon here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.